There is a habit sitting inside almost every Western bathroom right now that feels completely ordinary, something nobody has ever questioned. And yet, in many Japanese homes, it would be treated as an obvious mistake, the kind of thing you fix the moment you notice it. It is not about being cleaner as people, it is not about discipline or superior hygiene instincts. It is about a handful of small systems built into daily Japanese life that quietly prevent contamination before it starts, instead of cleaning up after it spreads. Be honest. You have probably done at least one of the habits on this list today without a second thought because it has never been presented to you as a problem. That is exactly how these habits survive. They do not look risky, they look convenient. Today we are going through 7 of them. Some involve your bathroom, some involve your kitchen. One involves something you carry with you every single day, and it might be the habit doing the most invisible damage on this entire list. Stay with me, because the mistake at number 5 is one almost nobody in the West even recognizes as a mistake at all. And after the final point, I will give you a simple 2-minute nightly check you can use tonight to catch most of these habits before they quietly become permanent. This is the Japanese Reset, where we explore small Japanese ideas that can make everyday life calmer, cleaner, and more intentional. Let's start with the one hiding in plain sight, right at your front door. Number 1. Wearing outdoor shoes past the threshold of your home. You know the one. You walk in from the street in the same shoes that touched a sidewalk, a public restroom floor, a gas station, and who knows what else. Continue walking straight across your living room carpet, your kitchen floor, sometimes even into your bedroom. This feels completely normal in much of the West because taking shoes off is often treated as optional, a personal preference rather than a household rule. Carpet gets vacuumed occasionally, floors get mopped when they look dirty. The assumption is that visible cleanliness is enough. Here is what actually happens beneath that assumption. Research on shoe soles has consistently found a wide range of bacteria, including strains associated with fecal contamination, picked up from public restroom floors, sidewalks, and other outdoor surfaces. Your shoes are not simply dusty. They are one of the most contaminated objects that regularly enters your home, and every step across your floor transfers a small amount of that contamination onto the surface your children may crawl on, your pet may lie on, or your own bare feet may later touch. In almost every Japanese home, shoes come off immediately at the jenkan, a slightly lowered entry area that functions as a strict boundary between outside and inside. This is not a suggestion. It is close to a universal rule, understood by guests and family members alike, without needing to be explained. Indoor slippers, kept exclusively for indoor use, often replace the shoes the moment they come off. The Western system cleans the floor after contamination has already spread across it. The Japanese system stops the contamination at the door before it ever has the chance to spread. The practical shift does not require architectural changes to your home. Place a mat or a small tray near your entrance and treat the boundary as real, not optional. Shoes off before crossing it every time, for every person, guests included. If you want an added layer, keep a simple pair of indoor-only slippers by the door. Try this tonight. The next time you walk in, stop at the door, remove your shoes, and notice how different the floor already feels underfoot. There is also an emotional layer to this habit that goes beyond bacteria counts. A home where the outside is allowed to walk in freely never quite gives your mind the signal that you have actually left the outside world behind. You sit down on your sofa still carrying, in a very literal sense, a small piece of every surface you touched that day. A firm boundary at the door does more than protect your floor. It gives your mind a clear marker that says, the day's demands stop here, and rest begins now. If you live with children or pets, this habit matters even more than the numbers alone suggest, since young children and animals spend far more time at floor level in direct contact with whatever has been tracked in. A consistent shoes off rule is one of the simplest, lowest effort changes on this entire list, and often the one with the largest practical payoff relative to the effort it takes. Number 2. Reusing the same bath towel for a full week or longer without washing it. A towel gets used once in the morning, hung back on the rack, and used again the next day, and the next, sometimes for a week or more before it finally goes into the laundry. It still looks clean, it still smells fine, mostly, so it stays in rotation. The problem is that towels rarely dry completely between uses, especially in a humid bathroom, and a damp towel left folded or bunched on a rack becomes an ideal environment for bacteria and mold to multiply. Every time you dry your body, you're also depositing dead skin cells and moisture back onto the fabric, and every subsequent use spreads whatever has grown there back onto freshly washed skin. In many Japanese households, towels are used only once or twice before washing, and it is common for household members to have their own individually assigned towel rather than a shared communal one. This is partly about hygiene and partly about a broader cultural comfort with individual, clearly designated personal items rather than shared ones that blur boundaries between family members. The hidden cost of the shared, rarely washed towel habit is not dramatic illness in most cases. It is a constant low level reintroduction of bacteria and moisture onto skin that was just cleaned, undermining the very purpose of showering in the first place. The practical replacement action is simple and requires no new purchases. Wash bath towels after 2 to 3 uses at most, and if possible, hang each towel with enough space around it to fully dry between uses rather than folded against a wall or bunched on a hook. If your household shares towels, consider assigning one towel per person, even using different colors to keep them distinct. We have covered the two habits you can see and touch immediately, but this next one hides quietly inside a routine most people consider completely hygienic. Number 3. Brushing your teeth using the same routine as everyone else in the household, storing all toothbrushes touching in one cup. Picture the average bathroom counter, a cup holding 3 or 4 toothbrushes, bristles touching each other, sometimes touching the sink surface, standing upright in a space that stays damp for most of the day. This feels harmless because toothbrushes are personal items already, each one used by only one person. The mistake is not who uses which brush. The mistake is how they are stored, close together, damp, and often uncovered, allowing bacteria from one brush to transfer through shared moisture and airborne droplets, particularly if the toilet is located in the same small room, since flushing can aerosolize particles that settle on nearby surfaces. In many Japanese bathrooms, and particularly in traditional Japanese home design, the toilet is often located in a separate small room from the sink and bathing area entirely, rather than combined into one shared space. Toothbrushes are also frequently stored with individual spacing or in a way that limits bristle to bristle contact, and some households replace them on a more regular schedule as a matter of course. The principle behind this separation is not about excessive caution. It is about recognizing that a bathroom, especially one containing a toilet, is not a neutral, universally clean space, and objects that go directly into your mouth deserve a slightly higher standard of storage than objects that do not. If your home layout does not allow for a separate toilet room, the practical fix is still simple. Store toothbrushes with enough space between them that bristles never touch, ideally in a holder that allows full air drying rather than a sealed cup. Replace toothbrushes roughly every 3 months or sooner if bristles look frayed, and always close the toilet lid before flushing if your toilet shares a room with your sink. This is one of those habits that costs nothing to fix and takes less than a minute, yet most households never think to question it simply because the toothbrush cup has always looked the same way, sitting on the same corner of the counter for as long as anyone can remember. Number 4. Leaving a damp bath mat on the floor for days without washing or airing it out. The bath mat sits on the bathroom floor, absorbing water from your feet every time you step out of the shower, and it rarely gets picked up, shaken out, or hung to dry. It simply stays there, gradually staying more damp than dry over the course of a week. A permanently damp mat pressed against the bathroom floor is close to an ideal breeding environment for mold and bacteria, particularly in a room that already has higher ambient humidity than the rest of the house. Every barefoot step onto that mat deposits a small amount of whatever has been growing there back onto clean feet. In many Japanese bathrooms, the layout itself works in favor of a drier space. Traditional Japanese bathing rooms, sometimes associated with the practice of furu, are designed with drainage built into the floor itself, and mats or bath stools used during washing are typically lifted, rinsed, and allowed to air dry rather than left sitting on a wet surface indefinitely. You do not need to redesign your bathroom to apply this principle. The shift is simple. After your shower, hang the bath mat over the edge of the tub or a nearby rail rather than leaving it flat on the floor. Wash it roughly once a week, and if your bathroom tends to stay humid, consider a small squeegee for the shower walls and floor to reduce standing moisture that keeps everything around it damp longer than necessary. We have handled the habits hiding in your bathroom. The next three move somewhere you might not expect, into your kitchen and into something you carry with you every day without a second thought. Number 5. Using the same kitchen sponge for weeks without replacing or properly disinfecting it. This is the mistake almost nobody recognizes as a mistake because a sponge simply does not look dangerous. It looks like a cleaning tool. It gets used to wipe counters, wash dishes, and clean spills day after day until it eventually falls apart or gets replaced out of sheer habit rather than any specific concern. Here is the uncomfortable reality. A kitchen sponge, kept warm and consistently damp, is repeatedly cited by researchers studying household bacteria as one of the most contaminated objects in an ordinary home, often carrying a higher bacterial density than many surfaces people consider far dirtier, including bathroom fixtures. The sponge does not just clean surfaces, it also transfers whatever it has already absorbed onto the next surface it touches, effectively spreading bacteria around your kitchen under the appearance of cleaning it. In many Japanese kitchens, sponges and cleaning cloths are treated with more deliberate rotation and care, often boiled, replaced more frequently, or hung to fully dry between uses rather than left sitting in a wet puddle on the edge of the sink. There is also a broader cultural habit of using separate cloths for separate purposes, one for counters, a different one for dishes, rather than a single sponge asked to handle every task in the kitchen. The Western system often treats a sponge as a single, all-purpose tool used until it visibly disintegrates. The Japanese approach treats cleaning tools the way you might treat a filter, something that accumulates what it removes and therefore needs regular replacement rather than indefinite reuse. The practical fix requires no special products. Replace kitchen sponges every 1 to 2 weeks, sooner if they develop an odor. Between uses, wring them out fully and prop them upright somewhere they can dry completely, rather than leaving them flat and compressed in a puddle. If you want an extra layer of hygiene at low cost, microwaving a wet sponge for about 1 minute or running it through a dishwasher cycle can meaningfully reduce bacterial levels between replacements, though it does not replace the need to eventually throw the sponge away. If a sponge feels wasteful to replace this often, consider an approach some households find easier to maintain consistently. Keeping two sponges in rotation, one drying fully while the other is in use, and treating a natural fiber brush as an alternative for certain tasks. Since brushes tend to dry faster and harbor less bacteria than porous sponge material. The specific tool matters less than the underlying habit, giving your cleaning tools genuine time to dry, and retiring them on a schedule rather than waiting for visible signs of wear. Number 6. Washing raw meat directly under the tap before cooking it. This habit often comes from good intentions. It feels like an extra step toward cleanliness, rinsing away anything visible on the surface of raw chicken or meat before it goes into the pan. The hidden problem is that rinsing raw meat under running water does not meaningfully reduce the bacteria on its surface, since proper cooking temperatures are what actually eliminate harmful bacteria like Salmonella or Campylobacter. What rinsing does accomplish is spraying tiny water droplets, carrying that same bacteria outward onto your sink, your counter, nearby dish towels, and any uncovered food or utensils sitting close by. Food safety authorities in multiple countries have specifically advised against this practice for exactly this reason, yet it remains a common habit passed down through generations without question. In many Japanese kitchens, raw meat and fish are typically handled with dedicated cutting boards and utensils kept strictly separate from those used for vegetables or ready-to-eat food, minimizing the chance of what food safety professionals call cross-contamination, meaning bacteria transferring from one food or surface to another. Rinsing is generally not part of the preparation process for raw meat, with cooking temperature relied upon instead as the actual safeguard. The shift here matters enough to state plainly because it touches on genuine food safety rather than simple tidiness. Skip rinsing raw meat and poultry under the tap entirely. Instead, pat it dry with a paper towel if needed, cook it to a safe internal temperature, and use a separate cutting board for raw meat that never touches vegetables or other ready-to-eat ingredients without being thoroughly washed in between. Number 7. The final habit, and possibly the most personal one on this list.
carrying your phone into the bathroom, and setting it directly on the sink or counter.
Think about what that does without you ever noticing. Your phone travels with you almost everywhere, resting on public tables, inside bags, against countless surfaces throughout the day, and then it comes into the bathroom with you, gets set down on the sink edge, and later gets picked back up and pressed directly against your face and hands without anything in between.
Multiple studies examining bacterial levels on phone screens have found that phones frequently carry more bacteria than commonly cited comparison surfaces, including some public restroom fixtures, simply because phones are touched constantly throughout the day and rarely cleaned. Bringing a phone into a bathroom, particularly setting it down on a damp counter near a sink or toilet, adds another layer of contact with a genuinely high bacteria environment.
This particular habit is less rooted in a specific traditional Japanese custom and more in a broader cultural tendency toward mindful separation between different types of spaces and activities, an idea that echoes the concept of meaning intentional space or pause, applied here not to a room, but to a habit. The phone belongs to one part of your day, the bathroom belongs to another. Blurring that boundary is where the hidden cost creeps in. The practical shift is genuinely simple and costs nothing. Leave your phone outside the bathroom when possible, even just on a nearby shelf a few steps away. If you do bring it in, avoid setting it directly on the sink or counter and get in the habit of wiping the screen with a dry microfiber cloth once every day or two, since it accumulates bacteria from your hands, your face, and every surface it touches throughout your day. There is a broader version of this habit worth considering as well. Phones are rarely the only object that travels everywhere without ever being cleaned. Wallets, keys, and bags often follow the same pattern, touched constantly, cleaned almost never. You do not need to treat every object in your life with equal caution, but build in the habit of occasionally wiping down the handful of items that travel with you daily, particularly anything that regularly touches your face or ends up on a kitchen counter, closes one more small gap between the outside world and the parts of your life meant to feel genuinely clean. Let that idea land for a moment because it connects everything you have just heard. None of these 7 habits are really about being unclean as a person. They are about small daily transfer points, shoes to floor, towel to skin, sponge to counter, phone to face, that either stop contamination at a boundary or quietly carry it further into your life than it ever needed to go. You do not need to change your whole routine overnight. You only need to change the order in which a few small habits happen and where you draw the line between outside and inside, used and clean, contaminated and safe. Here is a simple framework to make that practical, something you can start using tonight at no cost in under 2 minutes. Call it the 2-minute hygiene check. Before bed tonight, walk through 3 quick questions. First, are your shoes off and staying off past your entryway? Second, is your bath towel and bath mat actually dry right now or still damp from this morning? Third, when did your kitchen sponge last get replaced and is it propped up to dry or sitting compressed in a puddle? That is the entire check. 3 questions under 2 minutes, and they will catch most of the habits on this list before they quietly become permanent fixtures of your routine. Repeat it once a week until the better version becomes the automatic one. A cleaner home was never really about scrubbing harder or buying more products. It begins by noticing the few small points where the outside world quietly crosses into your daily life and deciding on purpose where that crossing should actually stop. Tonight, pick just one of these 7 habits and fix it. Not all 7, one. Which one surprised you the most? Tell me the number in the comments. I read every one, and I am genuinely curious which habit you had never questioned until now. If this video changed how you think about even one everyday routine, subscribe to the Japanese Reset for more small Japanese ideas that create meaningful, lasting change. And if you know someone who still keeps their shoes on indoors or hasn't changed their kitchen sponge in longer than they'd like to admit, share this with them. The useful lesson was never that one culture has hygiene figured out perfectly. It is that a handful of small boundaries, applied consistently, can quietly protect you from problems you never knew you were creating. Start with one boundary tonight. The rest will follow on its own.